this the reading room?
Yes, I'm Saad Mansour.
And I'm Travis Howard.
This is Reading Room Talk. Thank you for pressing play. Appreciate you guys listening. And today we have another special guest.
Oh, yeah.
Straight from New York. We have Dr. Asante Dixon on the mic. What's going on, man? How are you?
How are you, sir?
1 2 1 2. Turn up my mic. Mic check.
Mic check.
I can't hear.
We got you.
Let me turn your vocals up real quick. You want the hook first? You want the hook last? You let me know.
Now let me run 1 and 3 real quick. Let me just see how that's flowing before we get to that.
Okay, I got you. Wait, we got some people. Okay, all right. Anyways, what's going on, man? How are you?
All right. Well, thank you so much for dealing with me in this next couple minutes.
Oh, it's all good. We appreciate you being here with us. So we're going to start out by asking you, take us back to medical school. What was your toughest class or rotation in medical school?
All right. Well, I'll have to. Toughest classes is really what it really should be, because there wasn't one. There were a couple. But I can tell you statistics beat me down.
Oh, I heard about this.
And statistics wasn't even a major class. Statistics was one of those classes where they were kind of like, oh yeah, you guys need to learn statistics. And we're like, oh my God, we forgot about that. All right, tell you what, tomorrow we're going to start statistics. It's going to be, like an hour a day for the next week, and then you take a test next week. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Let me tell you something. My brain does not function with statistics. It didn't work.
Yeah, it's tough. It's I feel like it's the way they teach it too. They can just kind of throw it at you. It's not really like, it's not like something they focus on. They just kind of throw it at you and they assume that you like took it in like, high school or something. But it is, it can hit you. Definitely.
Oh,
definitely.
No. It landed me. Statistics was the only class I've ever failed.
Man.
And go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, why do you think it was so difficult?
Well, I mean, I had never taken it before. I'd never had any exposure to statistics, as a formal class before.
It's not a prereq for med school.
It's not. And also, as you stated, I think the way they teach it is very much so, here it is, the test is next week, do it. And then on top of that, I think I just was overwhelmed because you're doing all these other major classes.
Yuppers.
And then your brain is like, okay, you still got to learn that statistics stuff. And it became kind of like a nuisance.
Yeah.
And I had to make a decision as to where I was going to spend my time. Am I going to spend my time focusing on this 5-day class, or am I going to spend my time focusing on the big elephants in the room that were, really important?
Yeah, the other classes just needed time and effort. Like stats actually, you had to like turn on your brain a little bit. I gotta like actually figure this stuff out. But it's all good, man. So where did you go to medical school?
I went to the Georgetown University. In Washington, D.C.
All right.
Down in Northwest, where the rich people reside.
Yeah, where there's no metro line, exactly.
On purpose, yes.
Right.
That's exactly right. So take us back to where you're from. So tell us where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Manhattan. My family is immigrants, so that already is half the story. You already know where this is going. Typical New Yorker, born in New York, immigrant family, born in Manhattan, lived after Manhattan. We moved to the Bronx.
Nice.
Lived in Brooklyn for a hot minute, and then my father was like, yo, the block is too hot, and put his chips together and moved us out to Long Island. And I
That's a
did
move.
most of my life, grew up in Long Island. I will say a couple things for the New Yorkers out there. You have to specify that you're not from New York, you're from Long Island,
That's
even
right,
though
Strong
Queens
Island.
is all of 7 minutes away. You can't say you're from New York because they will want to fight you and say you're not from New York, you're from Long Island, and I appreciate that. I get it.
Listen, me and Travis are from the Midwest, and we listen to a lot of rap music, and we know that's a fact.
Right.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
However,
I got people.
However.
I have people on Long Island, and they say the same thing, man. They say the
That's
same
right.
exact thing.
Yeah, no, you have to. It's kind of like going to jail and trying to claim you from D Block when you really you're not from D Block. You got caught on a DUI. You have
That's right.
money. Your parents said they weren't coming to get you.
Not tonight.
And you're not in D Block, and you have to say that. So I think for me, I also learned that, I know we're going all over the place, but I learned that heavy when I went to college at Cornell, and Cornell is that Ivy in New York. And so you can imagine they had a lot of New York kids there. And so you have all these.
But it's like far away though, right? It's like Ithaca,
well,
right?
see, okay, so here we go, right? So there's upstate and downstate.
Yes, sir.
And to that, up until I got to Cornell, I didn't really know that upstate existed. Right? I thought New York was basically the Bronx, the boroughs, Long Island, Yonkers, a little bit of Connecticut, and then Jersey on the other side of the Holland and the Lincoln Tunnels. I did not know that there was this massive landmass
That's New York.
above Yonkers called New York State.
That's right.
And so when we got to college, and you have all these dudes talking about, yeah, I'm from Buffalo, and I'm from The Rock. And I was like, I'm sorry, you're from where? And he was like, that's my roommate. He was like, I'm from The Rock. And I was like, what is The Rock? He was like, Rochester. I was like,
no.
Like that.
Okay.
That's actually incorrect.
Okay.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Elmira, dudes from Elmira and Syracuse and what we used to call, what I learned, people be like, oh, I'm from Bingo. And I was like, Bingo, that's Binghamton.
Bingo. Oh, I didn't even.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's a huge state. It's a huge state. I'm only getting familiar.
Gave us a lesson.
Yeah, no, I'm just getting familiar. You know who taught me though? Benny the Butcher, Griselda. They taught me that Buffalo is just different. I had no idea.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I thought it was the same thing. It's actually not the same thing.
Listen, it's ignorance all around, because those of us who live downstate, we kind of live in this bubble where Manhattan is the center of the world, and then just in a circle around us for 20 miles is the only thing that exists. And I was telling this story recently, might have been, actually it was on another podcast where somebody asked me, what the experience was like, and this is how ignorant we were. I was up at Cornell, and just imagine two guys talking to each other. They're both from New York. One's from downstate, one's from upstate. And the downstate kid says, yo, you got the same driver's license as me. And the upstate kid is like, well, why wouldn't we? And the downstate kid is perplexed as to how this kid who lives 5 hours away has the same driver's license as he does.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they tripped out.
Because we don't even think of upstate as being New York. It's kind of like another place. So when you see another kid from Rochester with a New York driver's license with the same license plate as you, you're like, yo, how you get this New York license plate?
It's illegal.
Because we obviously live
That's
on
how
two
dumb.
different
That's
planets.
how dumb we were.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's so funny. So wait, so tell us. So
Yeah.
you were in high school in Long Island then?
High school in Long Island. Graduated from Baldwin Senior High School. That is South Shore, Long Island, for you anatomy buffs.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about 15 minutes from Queens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Freeport, Roosevelt, Baldwin, Westbury, Hempstead. Those are the areas. And for you rappers out there, now I'm older than you young men, and so therefore I don't listen to this nonsensical rap that you do. I grew up on more authentic hip hop music.
Oh,
So you're talking
wow.
about
Ouch.
people like Public Enemy,
Oh
right?
man,
Public Enemy was from my area.
that's right. That's
I
right.
don't. I'm gonna start ripping. Somebody's out there. There's an old head out there listening, and they know about K Solo
Oh, I know about K
and
Solo. That's Redman's boy.
ooh,
Got all the. Oh yeah.
K Solo and Busta Rhymes,
That's right.
right?
Oh,
And so
yeah.
we had our Mob Deep representatives, and we did our
Mm-hmm.
thing in Long Island. But Long Island is one of those places where no matter how many times you say Busta Rhymes went to your high school or Mob Deep, half of Mob Deep is from Hempstead
That's right.
or
Prodigy. Mm-hmm.
whatever, they're still gonna say you're still from Long Island, and you're not going to ever beat Brooklyn. You're not going to ever beat Queens. Even though only one rap group ever came out of Staten Island, you still can't beat Staten Island because it's a borough.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just this is what we talk about: life being unfair. The system is rigged.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So wait, so how did you not become a rapper and end up at Cornell?
Because my parents are immigrants.
Mm.
And so that was just not going to happen, no matter how well I thought I could rhyme and freestyle. It is not acceptable in an. Go ahead.
Immigrants from where?
Trinidad and Tobago.
Very cool.
Gotcha.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's
very, very heavy education.
Absolutely.
Education, and so therefore, for you to come home and say, hey, Ma, you want to hear? I got this new freestyle. She would be like, you would do it. She would be like, okay, let me hear, and you give it to her, and then put your arms together and be like, yeah, and then she would be like, all right, very nice, but I hope you know your sums as well as you know them stupid rap songs. Right? And for all of you out there, sums in the West Indies is a word for like your math. Sums.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I like it. I like it. Yeah, I feel like
that's wonderful.
You'd have to do both. You'd have to get good grades and do the rap thing. You can't just do the rap thing. Yeah, you can't just do the rap part. So
no, you can't.
So like in high school, were there any like particular like classes or influences or like what kind of caused you to want to go to an Ivy League school? I mean, that's a big accomplishment from high school.
Well, I think that again, it comes down to your environment. Oftentimes, it's what your exposure is, and coming from my family, education was very important, and I had two uncles that were physicians, both from Trinidad,
very nice.
Tobago specifically, and one trained in England and one trained at Howard. And
cool.
They were kind of like the pillars of the family as the two physicians. As all immigrant families, they kind of, they fixate on the physicians. Like you could have somebody in your house, somebody in your family who's Elon Musk, and they would be like, nah, that's not good like a doctor.
That's exactly
What's the doctor say?
Exactly. Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
And so those two guys, I kind of watched them, and I think that was where the idea came about, pursuing medicine. And Ivy League, again, it's exposure. And again, I say immigrant because, listen, I grew up in New York, and so most people will not know that I am of immigrant descent. They will assume that I am multi-generational Black American.
Correct.
And there is a difference. And immigrant people tend not to be fixated on, well, you have to go to, they come from, oftentimes, and I say that because I know there's somebody screaming in their car right now saying, well, I come from Jamaica and we love HBCUs. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but immigrants tend to say, all right, well, Harvard is the best because we all know Harvard. Even when I was in my little place in my island back home, we all knew Harvard, right?
That's right. That's right. Now that makes sense.
I had a cousin, she is a year older than I am, and she got into Cornell. And I had another cousin, he was 2 years or 3 years older, and he was at Yale. And I kind of visited both. And when I visited Yale as a high school student, when I dropped him off for college, I thought Yale was just broke down. Like, it was kind of like an Ivy League hood. I remember walking into his dorm, and just walk with me. I walk into this dorm, and it's that Gothic, typical Ivy Gothic structure. And just imagine you walk into this kind of damp dorm, and there's this one single light bulb hanging from the ceiling with no shade or fixture, just a bulb. Right? And I was just kind of like, this is Yale? I was like, this is hood as you know what?
And New Haven isn't a joke either. That's exactly right.
And then, of course, I went to Cornell, and Cornell, it was a done deal. They had this thing at the time, I don't know whether they have it anymore, it's called Minority Hosting Weekend. So everybody met at Port Authority, 42nd Street in Manhattan, all the New York kids, and we took buses up to Cornell for the weekend.
Oh, that's awesome.
And on that particular weekend, this is in high school, and in that particular weekend, they had playing Biggie Smalls and A Tribe Called Quest.
Oh, that's a done deal.
So here I am,
feeling comfortable.
This junior in high school on this bus with all these New York kids, and let's be honest, it was really a lot of, Long Island and Manhattan, and borough kids.
Right.
And Yonkers, and we're all up there and having a great time. And then they have Biggie Smalls and Tribe Called Quest.
That's amazing. Wait, this they had a concert, or were they playing the music on the bus?
It was a concert.
Oh wow, yeah, that's done deal.
It was Tribe Called Quest, right? Well, let me get it right. Was Biggie there that time? Well, let's just for the podcast purposes, Biggie was there, right? Because that makes it sound even doper.
Yeah,
but I know for a fact it was Tribe. And here I am up at Cornell with all these kids. We're in this huge auditorium, and A Tribe is up there playing. Wow. And then I go to my cousin's dorm room, and she's a freshman, and I walk into her room, and she's sitting on the bed, and there are like 5 girls sitting on the bed with her, and they're all like, hey, who's that? And she was like, oh, that's my cousin. He's up here visiting. And I walk in the room, and I was like, hey, lady, what's up?
Probably felt like Jesus Shuttlesworth.
Right? And so then I remember leaving the dorm room, ain't nobody was paying me no mind, but, I left with my chest all puffed out, and I was like, okay, you know what? Between this and the concert, if this is what it's like every day with Tribe playing every Saturday, this is where I'm at.
That's right. That's so important. That's really, really important that you went to see an Ivy League school, and the culture that you were accustomed to was there when you got there. And that just made it a done deal. So that's awesome. I mean, that makes complete sense.
That was I can tell you. And guess
what? Easy decision.
Surprise everybody. When I got to Cornell, I never saw another concert again. Right? Like they never had another concert for all the 4 years I was there.
They knew what they were doing.
You know what I'm saying?
But you know what? It worked though. It worked for you though. it worked though. You got there, you know, like you decided to go there. I mean, I feel like if you don't really have that type of like, you know, like situation or that type of experience, I mean, you might decide, you know, I'm just do a community college around here for a couple years, or, you know, like it's just a different vibe when like you feel like, oh, this is relatable. I can make this. I can do this. You know,
Absolutely.
Biggie's here.
Well, I think for all of the people, you know, young kids listening to us right now, you know, despite the, you know, the witty banter that we're kind of like interjecting here, the bottom line is exposure is key.
100%.
You know, when somebody gives you the opportunity to do something that is not along the usual path,
Mm-hmm.
you have to ask yourself, what is the downside of seeing that?
Exactly.
What is the
Exactly.
downside of seeing that? And for us as people of color, I think that oftentimes, depending on where we grow up, that deviation from normal, that deviation from the repetitive,
Mm-hmm.
is viewed by us as being way too risky.
Oh
Exactly.
yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sure could
And
be.
you're
For a
told not
number
to
of
do it.
reasons.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's 100%. Like so many reasons. I mean, you guys can get
So
into it,
many
but
reasons.
yeah, so many reasons. So,
Man,
wow.
it's risky. You don't want to set yourself up. You know, yeah.
Right.
I mean,
And like, I
so
think I was
just
gonna say
don't.
also, I was gonna say just like having a growth mentality when it comes to these things. Like, you know, sometimes just like the fear of failure makes you not want to pursue something that seems, you know, very
Right.
tough. But you know,
That's
you
so
got to go
true.
for it. You got to give yourself a chance. And if you don't make it, you don't make it. But like, you'll have that experience at least. So
Right.
no,
And you say,
that's
ask
awesome.
yourself that question. You know, what is it worth it to experience this? You know, I think oftentimes the answer is just yes. See what it's about.
Hmm.
You know, expose yourself to
Exactly.
something that you may not actually think you might be interested in.
Yeah. No, we've talked about this. I mean, Travis, you said you did like an engineering program at Ohio State before you went to Ohio State, right?
Oh yeah, yep. Made sure
Yeah.
that I would hit the ground running.
Hmm. Hmm.
Science, math, those sort of things. I did well at those, but I made sure I wanted to do well. So I exposed myself early, and it just led to more opportunities. So yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta get yourself out there.
No, that makes sense. Wow. So tell us more about Cornell. Like, how'd the classes go? How did OChem go?
So I'm going to tell you that Cornell was wonderful. I really think that I owe a lot of who I am to those 4 years at Cornell. I think it was a great decision to do Cornell over Yale
Hmm.
or, the other Ivies that I visited and had interest in.
Hmm.
And I think it was because of that. It was that same thing that I'm telling you guys not to do. I was just very comfortable because basically we had transplanted all of um, the black and Latino population from New York who had the grades to go to Ivy League. They all
Hmm.
were up at Cornell. All right.
Wow.
So even though we're at an Ivy League school, and Cornell was very segregated. So we're talking about a school where there's an Africana house,
Hmm.
there was a Latino living unit, there was a Jewish living unit, there was a Native American living unit called a Guego that was actually shaped like I think the 5 major tribes of
Oh, wow.
Indians. Um, there was a uh, there was a gay and lesbian living unit. It was extremely segregated. Um, Also by where people lived. So most of the people of color lived on North Campus.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it was to the point where if I was down Central Campus, I remember one time I was getting on the bus, and as soon as I put my first foot on the step of the bus driver looked down at me, and he was like, "I'm not going north."
Oh,
And
man.
Oh
Okay.
wow.
I
Wow.
backed off the bus because
Hmm.
guess what? I was going north.
Right. Right. Right.
And when I backed off the bus, I was like, hold up. what if I wasn't going north? But nevertheless, I was like,
Exactly.
yeah, but I really was. So,
Wow.
And,
Those experiences are crazy. Wow. Wow.
and they
Wow.
had, Cornell was also it was a very rebellious culture. So they had a lot of sit-ins, a lot of protests. There was a quote unquote terrorist organization that was operating out of Cornell. It was called Tupac Amaru. I may be pronouncing it wrong.
That's
but
amazing.
it was a bunch of students that were like blowing stuff up, and they like ripped a hole in the tennis bubble, like took a blade and like slit half the tennis bubble down, and they were like exploding bombs and garbage cans and stuff.
Oh, that's out of control. Then they go and sit in class with you. That's
oh yeah.
That's out of control. So can you tell us what year was this?
I was 91 to 95.
Wow.
Okay.
91 to 95. By the way, that was also, I repeat, the golden era of hip hop, 91 to 95.
Ooh.
And
here we go.
It was also, you can imagine being at Cornell, 91 to 95, what the parties were like.
Oh my God. Especially with all the New Yorkers up there. Wow.
Oh my God.
God.
And so the thing with Cornell is that, as is life for all of us, you're only 5% of the population, but when you came home in the evening or on the weekends, we all kind of came back home to North Campus.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so therefore, when you were home in the evening and on the weekends, your North Campus existence was very comfortable.
And that's so important. That's so important. Like,
now,
you want to feel like you're at home.
I have heard that over the years, they have tried to desegregate that Cornell atmosphere with what they called random housing, which is that you can no longer apply to Africana or apply to the Latino living unit. Now they randomly place you as a freshman.
Gotcha.
But if there are any Cornell people out there who are younger, they can tell whether or not that still exists, or did that fall through, or what.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. No, that's interesting. But like just having, like, I feel like it's like going to school at home for you then, you know, like it's like you're at Ivy League, but then like you just go home and it's like being at home. So it's an amazing feeling.
So here's the thing, right? So you asked me about organic chemistry. So let me get to that in a minute, but I will tell you that feeling of being away and being in a majority school, but yet being a minority that's very comfortable in your minority environment, that worked for some people, but for many of us, that's what took us out of the boat, right?
That's actually a good point. Yeah.
Because here you are at this Ivy League school that your parents, very proud of, and probably working hard to pay this damn tuition, if you didn't have a scholarship. And here you are on academic probation because you're too busy smoking weed and, smoking weed and listening to CDs and mixtapes.
That's right.
And now you're on academic probation for 2-3 semesters in a row because you can't get on your feet because you fell right back into the same type of at-home environment that rewards people who just sit back and chill.
It's a great point. It's a great point because it's a smaller pond. So like if it's easier to be the coolest person there than it is to like be the coolest person at home. So it's exactly. A tough. It's very tough. It's like you gotta have some goals. You gotta have some foresight to know that this is not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to be the coolest person at Cornell failing out. So that's
for sure.
And I tell you, there was all kinds of impostering going on. I can remember there were Cornell kids who were caught like after a party, firing guns. Right. So, talk about trying to be who you're not. You're an Ivy League student. Like, why are you firing guns indiscriminately in the air and having people have to arrest you because one of the bullets went into a dorm and the bullet landed on a bed next to a woman who was sleeping? Where are you?
What are you doing? Yeah. Now you mentioned some like political activism and sit-ins and things of that nature at Cornell. You said you were there from 91 to 95. And one thing that I immediately thought of was that was the time of the LA riots and the incident with Rodney King. Can you take us back, or do you remember the feel? Like, what was going on? I feel like in a college setting, folks are trying to find themselves, and they want to get involved and they want to get politically active. What did you experience at that time, and how did you feel going to class when all that was going down?
So I think now I want to be specific. What year was the LA riots again?
I think it was 91, 92.
90,
I think it was 92.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would have been, freshman, sophomore at that time. And I'm going to be honest with you. I did not yet figure out political environment yet. I was still very freshman-y, which was, I was that dude that the dining hall opened up at 6:30, and I was there at like 6:20 outside with my car getting ready to swipe, right? Because the menu said that they were having omelets, and I didn't want to be late.
That's good for you. That's good for you. That's sometimes
you want to sleep at it.
But see, this is discipline. It's just because I'm greedy, right? And
it's worked out though.
I can remember my roommate Marcus McFerrin, who's he's a dermatologist right now somewhere.
Ooh, shout out Marcus.
Marcus and I, Marcus and Marcus is one of those dudes who was from he was a black dude from Erie, Pennsylvania. And you talk about shock. Like when I met him, I was like, "Yo, where you from?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm from, I think it was Erie. I think it's Erie, Pennsylvania." And I was like, "I don't know where that is."
That's Travis's neighborhood.
Right, it's pretty close to where I grew
up. Small town, and but that's a whole nother podcast to tell you about the different types of black people that exist in the world. And and I can remember Marcus and I at 4:00 in the morning, laying in our beds, freshman bed, so the room was shaped like an L, and so we couldn't see each other because the room shaped like an L. But we talking and we're like, "Yo, what time is it?" And he'd be like, "Yo, it's 4:15," and I'd be like, "Yo, you think they got that special strawberry syrup?" And he would be like,
"What?"
Because we're thinking about the
breakfast. Yeah, I'm hungry.
Oh, it's so good. You had a focus though. It wasn't shooting guns, which is good.
No, we weren't. No, we were definitely not shooting guns. But okay, I'm all over the place. You asked me about classes, right? Class was hard as hell. Okay, because I was a communications major, but I knew I wanted to be pre-med, and so I started doing all the pre-med recs, pre-rec classes, bio, orgo, the usual. Yeah. And I can tell you, those classes were hard.
They're not easy.
They were not easy.
I was going to say, at an Ivy League school, I feel like there's an intimidation factor. You're there with like a bunch of non-black people who are like the smartest people in their classes, and you're just sitting there with them. It's a lot of pressure, I'm sure. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of intensity.
A lot of intensity and size. I mean, you imagine, wherever you are listening to this podcast, just think of when was the last time you went to, probably pre-COVID, when was the last time you went to like a large theater, like Lincoln Center or someplace where people,
right.
And you're sitting in this bio class that you can't even see the professor's face because you're so far back. Right. I mean, you can see that he's standing there.
Yeah, me and Travis both went to Ohio State, so that's every class.
It's kind of like that.
So you guys,
those weed out chemistry classes, man, you couldn't see.
Yeah.
To hear you say you couldn't see the professor's face, that's exactly it. It's a kind of a blur.
Nope.
If you didn't
exactly.
Yeah,
it's like being like top level at a concert.
And I can remember Marcus and I sitting in Baker Hall. All you Cornell people, Baker is the one you have to like walk up these steps from North Campus, and it was like the steps from The Exorcist times 100. By the time you got up to the top of the building, you were smelling like funk and sweating. And the two of us sitting in the balcony in this chemistry class, and we were so tuned out, we were thumb wrestling. And then after we were thumb wrestling, then we were having like a little freestyle, like a whisper freestyle competition between us.
No doubt.
And then I can remember the Marcus, I didn't realize it, but he had fallen asleep next to me one time. And, you know, I'm doing my little chirocarbon trying to figure out. And all of a sudden he had like a myoclonic jerk in his sleep.
Oh, I love those.
And it was violent, like to the point where like his hands flew up and he was like, "Ugh!" Right? And
man.
I turned to him and he looked at me and I looked at him and I was like, yo, like have some behavior. This is why they don't let us in these places.
That's exactly right. Oh man, that's but you know what? It sounds like you and Marcus did it together. You know, you had someone to go through the whole process with.
Yeah, definitely. You know, Marcus was my freshman roommate. Mm-hmm. So Marcus, who I told you was a dermatologist now, mm-hmm. But interestingly, Marcus, when he started out at Cornell, he was all about research. He wanted to be a researcher.
Oh, I see.
And I was kind of like, what? You want to be a researcher? And my first question was, do researchers get paid? And he was like, yes, fool. Well, how else do they get a salary like everything else? And I was like, yeah, but I'm talking about, you know, like, can you buy a Benz being a researcher?
Right. Get that Benz.
You know, listen, people who are listening understand we're freshmen in college, right? So just walk with us, right? And so, and he was like, yes, you idiot. I'm doing research, this and that and the other. And he did a lot of research and entomology, and he was always in the research, you know, down campus doing research in the lab and this. And, you know, Marcus
Good for him.
You know, he was, you know, very researchy. You know, he came with his Birkenstocks one day and I was like, yo, you can't step foot on. Right. But
nah,
he had
son.
kind of, he had kind of, you know,
he adopted the culture.
But let me tell you, after we graduated Cornell, we went our separate ways, didn't speak to him for a while. Mm-hmm. And then one day, years after college, like we're talking, you know, probably in the past 10 years, I reached out, saw him, and we went to a party together in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yo, you know, my practice is this and that and the other. And I was like, your practice? What are you talking about?
Research practice?
And he was, yeah. I was like, what researcher got to practice? And he was like, nah, you know, I'm a dermatologist. I was like, what?
Wow.
I said, what happened to all this doing research for the love of people and science?
Wow.
And he was like, nah, man, I had to get paid.
I wanted that Benz. I wanted a couple
Exactly. Good for him, man.
So Marcus, if you're listening, I got all your business out on Front Street right now.
Oh, you're gonna have to. We're gonna have to talk to him next. So
you need to reach out to Marcus.
We need that Birkenstock story on wax as well. So tell us, how did Cornell turn into Georgetown?
So went through Cornell, struggled through Cornell, and when I say struggled, meaning it wasn't easy. You know, that pre-med track is not an easy track, as we discussed. And, you know, when you talk about your friends who were in other majors, I was the one who was in the library the most. And, you know, when I was a junior, we lived in a house with 7 dudes. And I was the only pre-med in there. And you can imagine, you know, we had a little living room downstairs with a TV, and I was the one coming in late and leaving early in the morning, and they were in there playing dominoes and you know, watching rap videos. And
Yeah.
all things along those lines.
No,
And
no shots fired, but being a pre-med communications major, not the same as being like a history major or an African American studies major. It's just a different animal with all the prereqs that you have to.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Different now.
And you got to do well.
And you got to do well. Exactly.
I will say for everybody out there listening, the engineers at Cornell, those guys worked hard.
Yeah.
Like that is not a joke major. Those dudes lived in the engineering quad.
I know about that life.
That's Travis. He's an engineer.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so
I spent a lot of time in that library.
And I remember my other roommate, Tony. Shout out Tony. Tony was engineering, and I remember coming home and he had this book that he was reading, and I was like, yo, let me see what it is y'all be reading. And when I opened this book, it was like a 200-page book. There wasn't one picture. It was just 200 pages of equations.
That's amazing.
And it was like something about metallurgy. And I was like, yo, where's the text? Is there no text? Are there no pictures?
It's all concepts. I was gonna say my dad is he's an engineer, and he always tells me that like he teaches at Jackson State in Mississippi, and he always says that like his tests are always open book. He's like, either you know it or you don't. Like if you don't know it,
you don't.
Yeah, like either you know how to work these equations or not.
That's what it's about, man. It's about the equations, the principles. You go in there, you solve the problem. It's not about memorizing 50 pages or something and then going and regurgitating it. Like that was the switch up, man.
Yes, that's a huge switch
God.
up.
But
man.
We do it. We do what we gotta do. I was mad.
I give you guys a lot of credit. I have another cousin. She is an engineer. She's actually a professor at Emory, engineer, and she's a lawyer.
Nice.
And I give her a lot of credit because I always respect her because of that little moment of me looking through that metallurgy book and feeling my pancreas contract because I was just like, I don't know what this is.
Oh, that's amazing.